Our webinar. Thank you for joining us today. I'd just like to share some quick housekeeping messages before we make a start. So all attendees are in listen-only mode. If you would like to ask a question, please use the Q&A function on your control panel. The webinar will be recorded and you will be sent a recording link as well as the slide deck over the next few days via email. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Patty to kick things off. Thank you.
All right, great. Thanks, Katie. Hi, everyone. Thank you for attending this webinar. I'm sure you're all well aware of why you're here, but just in case you're not. So today we're going to be talking about lots of new features in Altmetric. So it's an Altmetric update kind of looking now and over the past 12 to 14 months or so, what is new? So it's a year-ish of new features. I will be dipping back into the last couple months of 2024 with some of the new features that I just wanted to make sure we talk about as well. But we had a lot of things that happened in 2025-ish, right? It was really a banner year for Altmetric. If you blinked in 2025, you probably missed some new cool thing that we did in the Altmetric database. So that's what we're going to focus on here today. So I will obviously spend a lot of time in the actual Altmetric Explorer database to show you where all of these different things are. You'll get a live demo of that. But to start us off, we will have a slide deck kind of highlighting all the different things that we developed over the last year or so. But first, I know that we do have quite a lot of new people. Just looking at the list of folks who registered, quite a lot of people who are not current customers of Altmetric. So before we dive into the actual updates, I'll give a very, very quick intro to what Altmetric is, the tool, and what Altmetrics are as a metrics device, right? So what are Altmetrics? This is my very, very simple definition of what alternative metrics are. So we're capturing how people are sharing and talking about research online. So at Altmetric, the company, we're tracking conversations about research in all these different places online, places like social media outlets, mass media, blogs, etc. And I'll talk more about what we're tracking in just a little bit, because we've added some new things to our tracking. So that'll be some fun highlights to cover in just a couple of slides. But why does a tool like Altmetric even exist? So people often find us because they want to go beyond just the traditional academic impact, right? So more and more people are being asked to demonstrate their research impact. So that might be, maybe just your department at your institution wants to demonstrate the impact that your department is having on the university's greater research goals, right? Or maybe you are funded by a particular funder that has very specific requirements for demonstrating the broader impact that work is having, that is resulting from that award. So I just put one example definition of research impact on the slide here. So research impact could be defined as an effect on, change, or benefit to the economy, society, culture, public policy or services, health, the environment, or quality of life beyond academia. So as I'm sure we all know, citations are usually used as a proxy to measure academic impact, but citations really don't help at all when we're trying to discover and communicate impact beyond academia. And so, as again, I'm sure most of you are well aware, proving actual real-world impact is incredibly difficult to do, but Altmetrics can help you kind of bridge that gap between the research output, research publication, and then the downstream impact that may be occurring, and really help you find some interesting tidbits to help tell that impact story. I always do like to clarify that Altmetric attention in and of itself does not equal research impact. Attention happens for a variety of reasons. You could have a publication that has received tons of attention online, has a really high Altmetric attention score, but it could be for not so great a reason, right? So one example that I use all the time is the infamous retracted Lancet paper linking vaccines and autism. Has a really high Altmetric attention score, but it's because people are refuting what it is saying, right? So Altmetrics, they still are a proxy, and we always want to kind of look at and see what people are saying to help build that narrative, build that case that this research actually is having an impact, instead of just relying on the number itself to tell the whole story. All right, quick reminder of how Altmetric actually works, because I think this is important, always to remind people who maybe are seasoned veterans of using Altmetric, but also new folks who maybe, this might be the first time you're ever hearing about Altmetric. How does this work on a technological level? Obviously, this is going to be, very brief. There's a lot more going on behind the scenes, but to give you a quick overview. So at Altmetric, we follow a bunch of different sources online. So those could fall into buckets like post-publication peer review, Wikipedia, policy documents, news, blogs, the list goes on. Again, I'll delve deeper into what that list actually is and what it encompasses in just a second. But we follow a bunch of places online, and then we look for links to research in those different sources or places online that we're tracking. So on the screen, you see an example X post, right, formerly Twitter. It has a little tweet, right? And then at the end of that, this Twitter account is linking to a research publication. And so what we at Altmetric can do is we can follow that link, and we can see that, you know, they're sharing a research publication. And we do that by looking at, you know, the DOIs or PubMed IDs or ISBNs, all those different unique identifiers that are assigned to those research publications. We use that as a consistent thing to track across all of the different places online that people are talking about the research. So we're going to collect all of those mentions and display them in one place in the Altmetric Explorer platform. So quickly, I always like to emphasize, we are not monitoring keywords. That is, we're not tracking to see, oh, has you know, Northwestern University been mentioned in the news somewhere, or has you know, the PI of Northwestern CTSA Hub grant been mentioned in the news somewhere. We're not using keywords to do this. We are looking for actual specific links to research publications in all these places that we're tracking. So just to quickly visualize this, Scientific American, that's one of the sources that we're tracking. In their stories, they link out to tons of research. So within the text of that document, we can link out, it's linking out to a paper. And so then we can bring together that Scientific American news mention alongside all of the other news and blogs and policy documents and X posts and Facebook posts and Reddit posts that have also mentioned or talking about that same research publication. So hopefully that makes sense, but let's dive a little bit deeper into the places where we're looking for mentions of research. So we do not track the entire internet. That is, we're not looking everywhere for mentions of research. We have a set of sources that we're tracking that fall into these different categories or kind of colorful buckets, if you will. So these sources are where we're looking for those mentions of research. Some are standalone, kind of self-explanatory, like X and Facebook and Wikipedia, but some of these are groups of sources like policy documents, news, and blogs. To give you an idea of the volume of sources we're tracking in some of these categories, we're tracking over 1,000 policy sources, 2,500 clinical guidelines, 9,000 news sources, 37,000 podcasts, over 10,000 blogs, close to 800,000 Facebook pages, and 34 different Wikipedia languages. Now, with that said, 3 of these things that you see on the screen here are some of our new things that we're going to be talking about today in just a slide or two. So clinical guidelines, Blue Sky, and podcasts are 3 new sources, 3 new colors that we added to the Altmetric visualization, as you see there, over the last year or so. So we'll talk more about those in just a moment. But before we do, one thing I wanted to address is a question that I am asked all the time. Most popular question about our sources. Do you track LinkedIn? So unfortunately, the answer is no. This is sort of a non-update update. So we do not track LinkedIn, mentions of research on LinkedIn. We would love to. However, currently LinkedIn does not have an API where we could actually pull in all of those mentions and show you them in the Altmetric Explorer platform. So I included a funny image that a researcher actually posted on LinkedIn. So we've seen more and more of these over the last few months of people, universities, researchers, kind of posting on LinkedIn saying like, hey, can you two talk to each other and figure out how this can happen? So we have been in conversations with LinkedIn about this, but at this point in time, they do not have an API for us to be able to pull in those mentions. So if you would like to participate in this conversation, you can feel free to join that conversation on LinkedIn about how, you know, it would be great if this was technically feasible, or if, I don't know, someone on the call, maybe your BFFs with the CEO of LinkedIn, you could always put a bug in their ear. But yeah, so unfortunately, like I said, it's a non-update update, but we do not track LinkedIn because it is not technically possible to do so at this point. All right, so, you know, that's a bummer, but let's turn to all the fun new updates that I'm going to highlight now for the rest of this presentation. So clinical guidelines, as we've already saw on that slide a couple slides ago, this is a new source, a whole new color to the Altmetric badge visualization that you see. It's kind of like a minty teal sort of color, I guess. But yes, we added clinical guidelines to Altmetric. And so this is great, especially for those who work in biomedicine. So clinical guidelines, these are documents that offer recommendations for clinicians, healthcare practitioners on how to manage and treat specific medical conditions or support decision-making in patient care. They are based on the best available evidence and kind of expert consensus, and they aim to reduce variation in practice and improve the quality of patient care. So in Altmetric, we track clinical guidelines as a separate attention source from policy documents. So this is so we can, support medical affairs professionals, funders, academic researchers with understanding the practical applications and kind of long-term impact of medical research. So we source the majority of these clinical guidelines from the Dimensions publications database. So Dimensions is kind of a sister product of Altmetric. And so by and large, again, there's kind of some caveats to this, but their publication type, for example, in PubMed, which is part of the source that we're getting publication data from in Dimensions, their publication type in PubMed is practice guideline, or patient education handout. And as you can see, big numbers on the slide here. As of yesterday, when I pulled this number, there are currently 2,544 organizations where we're tracking clinical guidelines for. And I'll show you what those are and how you can look at that list yourself in Altmetric Explorer once we get to the live demo portion. But this is kind of a massive undertaking because clinical guidelines are all over the place. So some of them will be on association websites. So we had to kind of go out and find these sites and then look at the PDFs and get the content and find the citations within those. Some of these clinical guidelines appear within policy organizations. So there are going to be some organizations that have policy documents and clinical guidelines. So World Health Organization is one of those. So like the screenshot you see here, World Health Organization guidelines for malaria, that is classified as a clinical guideline, but they also produce material that would be classified as a policy document as well. And then also, there's journals that publish clinical guidelines too. So we had to write algorithms that could then tell, is this just a regular old, journal article, or is this an actual, clinical guideline? So we had to bring all these things together in order to make clinical guidelines searchable and surfaceable in Altmetric Explorer. But again, pretty cool source for demonstrating, bench bedside, our research is having an impact on patient care, using that as a proxy in, demonstrating your research impact. All right, that was a long one with lots of slides. This next one, I think is just one slide, but Blue Sky. This was a new source that we launched in late 2024. So this is dipping back into the 2024 pot, but it's again, another new color to the Altmetric visualization. It's very similar to Twitter. It's a light blue, but it does have its own unique color. But if you're not familiar with what Blue Sky is, it's kind of like old Twitter. The person who launched or founded Twitter went on to then found Blue Sky. So Blue Sky was publicly launched for open registration in February 2024, and then we started tracking it in November of 2024. We did get some kind of retroactive mentions of research, but by and large, most of the mentions that we're capturing are November 2024 onward. So as you can see, quite a lot of conversations about research happening on Blue Sky. We have some ups and downs, but over the last 6 months or so, 75,000 to 100,000 mentions of research every month on Blue Sky. So pretty cool to see. Actually, it's more than that per month because each one of those lines is a week in a, so ignore that statement, way more than 100,000 mentions per month that we're seeing from Blue Sky every month. So exciting new thing. We're seeing more and more universities, researchers start to use Blue Sky to communicate their research impact kind of as an alternative to X. All right, so the final new source, so the final new color of the Altmetric badge is podcasts. So it's kind of like a purpley pink color that you'll see reflected in that visualization. So podcasts are really no longer this kind of niche medium. They're a growing dynamic space where research is being debated, explained, shared far beyond just academic papers, right? So Altmetric is kind of tuning into where these research conversations are happening. By capturing these conversations, we're broadening the landscape of attention that our customers can monitor. So we're the first tool to track podcasts as an attention source. So I think that's really exciting. And so how does this work? So as you can probably imagine, we can't tap into the audio of these podcasts and like pull out where they're mentioning research, right? Because nobody's rattling off a DOI or a PubMed ID in a podcast, right? But in podcasts, they will usually have show notes. If they're citing research, it's a legit good podcast, they should have show notes where they actually list the research that they are talking about. So then we can follow those links and see the actual research publications that they are mentioning and citing in the audio of that particular podcast. So we do have a bucket of 4 million podcasts that we can surface to see if they're talking about research. And so as of right now, over 37,000 podcasts have mentioned research so far. So I just think it's pretty cool. As you can see that little factoid there, in 2026, it's estimated that 619 million people will listen to podcasts. So it could be a pretty interesting metric to follow to see if people start using this in narrative impact statements and things like that. But also on the flip side, I was just having a conversation with a researcher the other day who runs a podcast. And so if that's you, if you also run a podcast, or if you have a podcast at your institution that you'd want to track, you could also use a tool like Altmetric to search for your specific podcast and then see what's happening with that attention. All right, so now moving on from new sources that we're now tracking to some new features that we have released. So one, this is pretty small, but we will, if you're not sure where this is in the platform, don't worry, we'll get to this on the live demo. But we did add dimension citations to the attention timeline. So this is actually kind of another pretty new feature as well. If you pop into what's called an Altmetric details page about an individual publication, you now can see that timeline of attention for just that one specific paper. And so a new thing that we did is we added citations to that. So it's very common request that people want to kind of compare number of citations to the Altmetric attention, just to see what the kind of volumes look like in comparison to each other. So now you can see citations reflected on that timeline view, and more broadly as well, you can link out to dimension citations too from within the Altmetric Explorer interface. So we at Altmetric are not doing the tracking of citations. That is something that is in Dimensions domain, but we do work together, and so now we can incorporate those citations into that visualization. All right, sentiment analysis. So this was Altmetric's first AI built or fueled feature that we released. And so what sentiment analysis is we're looking at Blue Sky and X posts to see the sentiment. What are people saying about this research? Or are they saying positive things? Are they saying negative things? So, if I was a researcher who's doing research in an area that might be a little bit more controversial, that could be an interesting thing to kind of keep an eye on. Or if I worked in communications and marketing, I want to see the sentiment of the research that our university is producing. So a variety of different ways that you could probably use this. But one thing that I think is nice about adding in sentiment analysis is that usually Blue Sky and X, they have very, very high volumes of attention that are occurring. So it's difficult to kind of parse through thousands or even hundreds of thousands of posts, right, to get anything useful out of them. So I think now that you have the ability to search by, people who are saying strong positive or strong negative things about your research, it can be easier to surface and get more meaning out of the social media posts. But I also have a couple more slides just about this scoring. So it's a whole spectrum, right, of strong negative all the way up to strong positive. So strong negative, for example, expresses strong criticism, warns against or alerts about the paper that has been mentioned. Or strong positive expresses strong recommendation, calls the research essential or a solution, or it praises it as a great work or evidence, right? And then everything kind of in between. So this is tricky. It's difficult. It's not perfect. For example, the other day I saw a strong negative, one that was rated as strong negative, where the tweet or whatever, or if it was Blue Sky post, I don't remember, but the person said, oh, the negative results from this study. So it's AI, it's not perfect. So it saw negative and it was like, they're saying something negative about this paper. So it's not, as sophisticated as a human brain, right? Where it can say like, oh no, they're not saying something negative. They're just saying these are negative results. So just so you know, it's not perfect, but you can give things thumbs up, thumbs down to try and improve the algorithm. But I also have a slide, just a little bit more information about how this works. Essentially, we're taking the posts, we're putting them through this Gemini prompt, and then it's giving a sentiment rating, which then pops it out on the other end back in the platform with strong negative all the way up to strong positive. Right, our next new feature to talk about is the researcher name filter. So I'm super excited about this. This has been a request for a very, very long time from our customers, is the ability to search for researchers by their names. So this is located in the advanced search. I'll of course show you where this is, but you can search for one researcher at a time. You can search for multiple researchers at a time. I'll show you the ins and outs of this. This feature is still under development, and you will pretty quickly see when I hop into the live demo of where it could be developed a little bit further. But nevertheless, even though it's still under development, not perfect yet, it is an exciting addition to the interface, and I think it will make a lot of people's lives easier when they're trying to search for either themselves or for a group of researchers. And then finally, our last new thing that just launched at the beginning of this month. So our first new development for 2026 is something called the Attention Digest. So it is in beta right now. So what the Attention Digest is in each Altmetric details page where you look at one publication at a time, you can click a button to generate a narrative summary of all of that attention. So another AI feature. But what I think this will be really interesting to see how people start to use this. But yeah, it's in beta. Again, you can kind of give thumbs up, thumbs down, and we'll see where this one goes over the coming months as it's released into its full product. But we'll talk more about this one when I hop into the live demo so you can actually see what it does. All right, and I should probably end the talk with what's coming in 2026, but I will forget. I'll forget to come back to the slides, so I will just cover this now before I pop into the live demo. So these are subject to change. This is not, written in stone, set in stone yet. So I just picked out a couple things. I asked our product team if they could give me, some things I could potentially highlight, and I just kind of cherry picked some of the things. So there are more ideas they're exploring than just this. But as I just mentioned, we'll have the full release of the Altmetric Digest in the coming weeks or month or two or so. But then the next really new thing that we haven't talked about yet is the Altmetric Attention Score History. So another popular request over the years is people want to see how an individual publication's Altmetric score has actually changed. If you're familiar with using Altmetric, right now, it's just cumulative. If you pop into a publication and look at its details page, it'll show you the score right now, but you can't look and see, well, 3 months ago, what was the score? 1 year ago, what was the score? So we don't cache the history anywhere in the system. It's just cumulative. Attention just keeps growing. So that'll be pretty cool to see how they do that. And I think that'll be a popular feature for our folks trying to really track the impact of a particular paper over time. We're also expanding, we're going to have expanded patent citations. So as of right now, if you're familiar with patent applications, there's like a front page with citations listed. And as of right now, we're just looking at front page citations and not in-text citations. And so we're going to expand this to add in-text citations as well. And so I assume that that number of patent mentions in Altmetric will probably explode once this happens. We are going to continue to expand clinical guidelines and policy sources. I'll come back to that in just a moment. And as I already mentioned, we want to improve the researcher search as well. Some ideas we're exploring, conference tracking abilities. Again, a popular thing we've heard is it's really hard to track conference abstracts, or maybe this refers to just conferences in general. I'm assuming it refers to conference abstracts based on conversations with customers, but looking at that to see if we can improve that tracking. Sentiment analysis beyond just social media platforms, see if we can accomplish that, and also enhancing our attention demographics. And so there is a demographics tab within Altmetric Explorer that we'll see briefly in the live demo, but we're going to see if there's anything more we can do with that to say, like, these are the people talking about this research publication, getting a little bit more information around that. But I said I would go back to one of these bullet points, continuing to expand clinical guidelines and policy sources. So this is an area where we're keeping on building all of these sources that we're tracking. If you really do want to stay on top of those or any of our updates, you can do that on our website. So let me just pop over really quickly to, if my screen will let me do it. This is the Altmetric website. It's just altmetric.com. It's a little hard to find. I always forget where it is, but if I go under resources, you will see something called product updates. So if I click onto that, you can subscribe to these updates. It's not like they're happening every day, so it won't, flood your inbox. But if you don't want to do that, you can always, bookmark this page or just visit it every so often. But it's a reverse chronological feed of all the updates as they're occurring. You can jump to different points in time over on the right. But as you can see, in December, we expanded our clinical guidelines coverage. So I could pop into this, gives you a little TLDR about what that is, back to announcements, or for example, like there's the attention digest, gives you more information about that, new policy sources, and it'll oftentimes just list out the new sources that we have added. I think for the clinical guidelines one, it didn't list all the sources because I think it was a very, very long list. So that is there, just so you know. But with that, let me pop into Altmetric Explorer and actually show you all these things. So let me move some things around on my screen so I can make sure I can see what I want to show you. I'll take a drink real quick. All right, so I'm going to kind of talk about all of these updates kind of interwoven, kind of all at the same time. But the first thing I actually want to show you is, it's not a hack, it's not a trick. You've always been able to do this, but I think a lot of people haven't thought about doing this. So if you're just logged in, this is the home screen of Altmetric. I don't have any sort of filters applied right now, so I'm just looking at the entire database. If you're ever curious about, well, what news outlets is Altmetric tracking? What clinical guidelines, what podcasts, what policy sources, what is the definitive list of what they are tracking? You can actually find that yourself in Altmetric Explorer. So if I pop on over to the Mention Sources tab, this is a tab that rolls up all of the news outlets, all the policy guidelines, et cetera, that we're tracking it's one long list, intermixed, as we can see here, but we can filter this according to a particular source that we're interested in. So let me just filter up at the top under Add Source. I can filter by policy, click Apply. And now I can see, so we are tracking 1,017 unique policy sources. And then I could scroll through and see all of them, but you can see World Health Organization is up at the top and you can see how many mentions that we have tracked. But always remember that you can download these, every tab has its own download. So if you want a list of all the policy sources we're tracking, download it to a CSV so you don't have to scroll through pages and pages. This will just, export this to Excel, right? Or we could do this for clinical guidelines. To see what that is, this will show you how many clinical guideline sources we're tracking. And again, you have the list there. And let's just do that for podcasts too, since that's a new source. So then you can see all of the podcasts as well. So just a little tip, if you're ever curious about what our source list is, go to the Mention Sources tab and you can actually download those. But let me go back to the Highlights tab. Okay, so a lot of our different new features that we have, you at least get a preview of them here in this Highlights tab. But let me make our search a little bit smaller, just so we're not looking at the full database. Let me search for an institution. So in the affiliation section, you can search for a university, a company. If you wanted to search for like a publisher or something, you could do that over on the right-hand side, but I'm just going to search for Michigan State, run my search, and now we're looking at a more specific search here. So like I said, lots of places where our new features even just appear in this overview page here, the highlights page. So now you will see if I hover over the attention breakdown in social media, there you see Blue Sky, right? So 19,000 Blue Sky mentions that we have tracked over the last, just the last year or so, right? For Michigan State University publications. If I hover over this red section here, now we will see podcasts reflected in this. And in the purple, that's where the clinical guidelines will show up. So you can see a little preview, high-level summary numbers just in that section there. Beneath the attention breakdown, this is where you will see sentiment analysis. If you noticed before I applied my filter here, just on the main homepage, this was not this was just blank. So you do have to apply some sort of criteria, search criteria in the advanced search in order for this to generate. But now I can see for all Michigan State University publications from all time, we can see the spectrum of the sentiment analysis for, again, Blue Sky and X posts. And always remember, if you're curious more about how this works, you can always click the little question mark and link out to some more documentation about sentiment analysis. One thing here is I always want to click, if I want to learn more about that strong positive content, I always want to click the bar, but you can't actually click it. If you want to explore the positive mentions, you can hover over these and then click them. So that's, I don't know if it's just me, but you have to click over the text in order to explore those further. So if I wanted to learn more about those strong positive comments on Blue Sky and X, I can click it. And then I'm actually going to be redirected to the mentions tab. This is a reverse chronological feed of all of the mentions as they are occurring. And so then I can explore all of these strong positive mentions. There's a lot of them. Maybe I'd want to put in a time frame here or something like that, or a more specific search. But as you can see here, like this X post, wonderful work, with a bunch of exclamation marks and more commentary about it. So it's been classified as a strong positive comment. I'm going to reset this and then go back to my main homepage here. All right, another thing that you will notice now that is different is you have a top researchers section. So the top research, it'll just show you the five top people who have the most mentions of their research from this result set that we are looking at. Quick note is that just because they're on this list, it does not mean that they are from Michigan State University. So this is going to capture all of the co-authors of Michigan State affiliates as well. So just a quick tip that if you're running searches in here for just your people or your publications and you're seeing people that you're like, they are not faculty here or they're not a researcher, just know that their co-authors are included in this section as well. But these are linked. So if you did want to look at a particular person's research publications, if you click on the name, it will actually filter your search results and you'll be able to look at just that person's profile. Okay, let me pop into the research outputs section because this is another place where there's a ton of the new features in here. All right, so this page shows you the individual publications one by one with their Altmetric attention score and their visualization. But as always, you've always been able to sort these by, well, in a bunch of different ways. You can sort these by newest publications first, oldest publications. You can sort by mentions in the past week, the past month, or whatever given time frame. And then you also can sort by source type. So for example, let's sort by podcasts. And we'll see what pops up to the top. So now we have this paper up here that has 29 podcast mentions. I'm actually going to find one that probably has, I think this one has clinical guideline. I'm going to pop into this one really quickly because I think this, yeah, it has all the different new sources that we're tracking. So it's a good example. And I knew that because I was looking for that teal color because that means that it has clinical guidelines that have cited this. So I pop into this publication, that opens up the Altmetric details page for this individual publication. And have a bunch of stuff going on. So up at the top, we have this summary information, but this is where we could click into all of these different mention types to see what's happening. So clinical guidelines, I can see the different guidelines that have mentioned this. And of course, these are all clickable. So you can actually take a look at those documents to see where this publication is being mentioned. This one has Blue Sky posts that have talked about it. And don't forget that if a publication has a lot of different types of attention, there might be this little more drop down over on the right. And so in this case, we have two options here. So podcasts, so I can see the podcasts that have cited or mentioned this one. And then also just to highlight, there's dimension citations too. So you can see the most recent 3 citations here, but then if you want to explore that in a little more detail, you can link out to the dimensions tool, which does have a free version, just in case you're curious about exploring dimensions and you don't have access to it. Let's go back to the summary. So those are all the different places where you can explore those in detail. Then we can see here, I'll come back to the attention digest in a moment, but we have the sentiment analysis just for this one publication at a time. And so again, if you want to know more about it, don't forget there's little tool tips around. But then underneath that, we have this timeline view. And so there's a timeline tab in the main Explorer interface where you can explore cumulative attention for a bunch of different papers, but this is just the timeline for this one. And so this is exportable, where you can download the data file, you can download the image if you want, and it is editable a little bit. So I know that this is X. So this paper has received a lot of attention on X. If I want to get rid of that, I can actually take it out, and so it adjusts it a little bit. And so now we have news and dimension citations that are kind of neck and neck with each other. And so this is the new thing we added to this, the dimensions dimension citations timeline. So you can see how citations have grown compared also to the altmetric type of attention. So this one has a lot of news attention, very consistent news attention across its entire life cycle, which is interesting. Is it a COVID paper? Yes, there we go. I was going to say it's probably a COVID paper. Okay, so that's the timeline view. We have the sentiment analysis, and then our newest thing is the attention digest. You see the little beta symbol there. So all you have to do to generate this narrative summary of this paper is click Show Attention Digest. This can take a few seconds, depending on how much information it does have to surface. But as you can see now, we have this long. This one's pretty long. It has a lot of attention, but we have we put it in like a narrative format, right? So we can see this kind of overall attention statement. So oftentimes it'll tell you, like, the majority of the news mentions happened in the first or the 2 weeks post publication or something like that. In this case, this one has very consistent news attention across all time, but depending on the type of attention, it can tell you some different things about when the attention occurred and that sort of thing. But then it goes into specific source types. So we have the news, and it links out to some notable mentions. We have policy documents, clinical guidelines, Blue Sky X, blogs, podcasts, lots of different things, and it puts a little narrative statement around it. So I think this is really nice because you don't have to start from scratch in coming up with some sort of narrative statement about your research impact. This could help you start it flowing right at your keyboard. So you can easily copy this whole text here and pop it in a Word doc to get you started. But I am very curious to see how people use this, the kind of reaction as people start to use it. And then also, again, if you agree with the digest or disagree with it, please be sure to interact with those because it'll help improve this product as we go forward. And my first question when I got access to this was, is this just for one paper at a time, or can I do this for a whole group of papers? And right now it's only one publication at a time. I don't know if they have plans to expand this to, where you can do 5 publications at a time or 10 or even more. But right now it is a paper by paper basis, but still, I think it gives you a nice starting point for how to talk about this attention, right? That's a constant thing that I get asked questions about is like, well, great, I have all this attention, what do I do with it? So hopefully that'll get the wheels turning and help people put it on paper, right? Okay, so that is, I'm trying to think if there's anything else I need to talk about on the details page. I don't think so. Let me X out of that. All right, so one other thing I want to highlight about this research outputs tab is the default view is this grid list or this grid view, but I sometimes like to view the results as a list. So I'm going to toggle over to that, because that gives you a little bit more metadata about each of these publications. And so now I can see all of the authors on this paper. I can see all of the institutional affiliations. I can see the subject areas in which this paper is classified. Where applicable, I can see supporting grants as well. And then sometimes you'll also see, like, this one contributes to a UN Sustainable Development Goal. So you get a lot of information, but importantly, all of these data points are clickable. So if you did see an author, or like you saw your own name, you could click on a person's name, and it will readjust your search to search for only that person's publications. So you get their summary, just that on that individual level. Or if you wanted to click on a grant number and you wanted to search in that way, you can definitely do that to see all the resulting publications from a grant, and adjust your search. But with that, maybe it's time to show the researcher name filter. So I'm going to go up into, let's go back to the main homepage. Okay, let me clear my results. The person I'm going to search for is at Michigan State University now, but we'll take that out because we don't need it. But in the researcher filter, so this is new, you can click the Add Researchers button, which will pop out this search filter here. So the person I'm going to search for Teresa Woodruff. All right, so this is the person I'm looking for. Luckily, she publishes Teresa K. Woodruff. But as you can see, if your name's Teresa Wood, you might have a problem figuring out which profile is yours. So we'll come back to that in just a second. But I know that this one is the person I'm looking for. I'm going to click that little tick box. If you did want to search for more than one, you can definitely do that, because sometimes people do have more than one profile, because name disambiguation is not easy. It's not perfect. So sometimes you will have to choose more than one profile for a person. But I've clicked Teresa Woodruff. I can click save. I'm going to run my search. And now I can see all of this person's publications that have altmetric attention that has been tracked, and I can do all the things, right, with just at the individual person level. So I also can see now over in the top researcher section, like she's the #1 result here. But yeah, this is always clickable. If you wanted to go to one of our top co-authors, you can pop in or click into someone's profile from there. But let me go back. So that problem of, if your name's Teresa Wood, or let's pop in my name, super common name. There's a lot of me. Which one am I? So this is why this is still under development. So why this feature is not fully fleshed out yet, because right now we cannot display affiliation information. So I don't know if this is Patricia Smith from Northwestern or Michigan State or whatever institution or company it might be. In order to check that, I actually have to click this little view profile button, and that will take me to dimensions, which is where we're getting this data actually from. And then I can say like, oh, yep, that's not me. I'm not at this hospital in Australia. And then I have to kind of go back and click through each one, which is a little bit cumbersome, right? So again, that's why this is being fleshed out and it's not fully formed yet. But I do have some, in the meantime, I have some tips on how to actually find the right person you're looking for if you are an Altmetric user and you want to do this right now. So for example, I can use this add scholarly identifiers section here. So I can pop open this. I'm gonna go back to the Teresa Woodruff example. If I have some of her papers, I can pop those in here. I can click save. I can run my search. And then, oh, okay, great. I can find her here. And I actually can't click on that one because that'll take me to a different place in the platform. But if I pop into the research outputs, all right, there she is. I can click on that and now it'll run her whole profile. So that's just kind of a trick while this is still being developed. Or, let me clear these out. You also can search for a person's name in this section here. Teresa Woodruff, and then if I put in affiliation, and it doesn't have to be their current affiliation, like she is fairly new, it's been a few years at Michigan State, but I also know she used to work at Northwestern. But if I pop in Michigan State, there we go, same sort of thing. I will then be able to click on her profile to view the whole thing. So just a little bit of a workaround for those who are current users who wanna do this. That's how I would go about doing it for someone who has a common name. But if you do need more help with that, definitely you can always reach out and let us know. We have engagement folks who do training and help you with those sorts of things for bigger groups of people and stuff like that. Okay, a couple other things I will show. All right, so the timeline view, actually, let me get rid of, we'll just look at the whole database now. Timeline, so of course now Blue Sky clinical guidelines podcasts are reflected in this cumulative timeline view. If I pop into demographics, we have these world maps of where in the world attention is happening for a handful of sources, and so clinical guidelines is one of them. So we can see that there, so we can see the coverage globally, and then you also can download this if you'd like. Mentions tab, we've already kind of seen this in action in a couple different demonstrations, but we can come in here, we can filter by sentiment if we'd like, or we can filter by policy documents, or by podcasts, or by clinical guidelines. So you can filter this accordingly as well. You also can search for very specific things in here too, like I don't know, why is this even a podcast, This American Life, or is it just an NPR thing? I don't know. Why is that okay, that's a bad example. But ologies, that's one, I think. There we go. I listen to this podcast. Ologies is a podcast that cites research quite a lot. You can search for a specific podcast as well. Mention sources, we've already kind of taken a look at this, but again, just you can pop in here if you want to see all the clinical guidelines and things like that. This is kind of your source of truth for that. Let me check my notes to make sure I showed everything. Attention digest, yep. All right, well, maybe I'll remember something I am missing, but let me check the chat. I think a couple questions may have come in, but let me see. Do you have any more info on what you would want to do to track research shared at conferences? No, unfortunately, with all of the 2026 roadmap stuff, that's literally all I have at this point in time. But I can ask if if our product team has any more information about it, and see if I can get back to you. I should have your contact information from the registration. But yeah, it's a good question, but unfortunately, I don't really know. Are all these features free to use? So I don't know which avenue your question is coming from. If you're a current Altmetric subscriber, if you have Altmetric Explorer at your institution, yes, they're all free, they're all included. But in case your question was down the other route of, is this whole tool free to use? No, this is a licensed subscription-based tool that your institution would have to subscribe to. So yes, all of these features are included if you have Altmetric at your institution, but no, there is no free version of Altmetric. Are there any, I think that's all. I haven't remembered anything that I was kind of missing or that I forgot to show, but are there any other questions that have come up? And I hope nobody, please don't ask about like the LLM and all the AI stuff and how it works, because I will not be able to answer those. You can ask them, but I won't have the answer. Well, I will hang around for a little bit in case people want to pop in other questions. But yeah, if you're not interested in seeing the questions, you can definitely feel free to log off. Oh yeah, so good question, Rachel. You may have already said this, but where are you getting the podcast data? So this is one of those ones that's weird to answer because we have a podcast source where we're getting 4 million podcasts, but I can't share what it is. So I don't know if it's just part of our contract with them, but unfortunately I can't actually tell you. But it's not Spotify. I can't say that. It's basically a podcast like repository. Yeah, I know it is interesting, Rachel. I don't know why. If the same source is mentioned in clinical guidelines and it's also a government document, is it counted twice while calculating the score? I don't know. I guess I'd have to look at an example. I do know it is a little, I don't know if this is what you mean. I can pop open something. Let me pop in. Let's do Michigan State University. Because a lot of clinical guidelines are published in journals, right? So sometimes it can seem like it's like a double citation or something, but it shouldn't be. But let me filter this by clinical guidelines. So if I filter something by clinical guidelines, usually I will see things where it's like, that's a guideline. Let me pop this in here. So we have this, okay, this is a report for National Surgical. Is this a clinical? Oh, this is, yeah, this probably like, is it a self-citation? I don't know. I'm not gonna be able to figure it out right now, but I'd have to, I should have known this question would come up, but I'd have to get back to you on this because I'm not actually sure if it'd be double counting or not. Noted, your question is noted, but I'm not gonna be able to answer it right now. Are the social media posts based on current status? If someone deletes a post or all their posts, will their data reflect what is? Yeah, so if at least I know for X, I don't know if it's different for Blue Sky, but for X, if someone deletes like their entire account, or if they delete individual things, we have to delete them as well. So yes, if they are not if they're not there anymore, we have to get rid of them. We can't keep them for the future. Any other questions? Well, okay, actually, while I'm, let's pop into one of these. Let's say this is a guideline. I think it is, but it is also mentioned in other guidelines. So that's where I was trying, that's my brain finally clicked, is that it can be a little confusing with, and this might not even be, Rajiv, what your question actually was, so apologize if I'm misunderstanding it. But a lot of times there will be different versions of the same clinical guideline. So it can appear like it's a self-citation, but this clinical guideline has been cited. So I don't know why I clicked off of that. This clinical guideline has been cited in other clinical guidelines as well. Some of them may be like, oh, here's the update for 2026. So technically it's not a self-citation, but it could appear that way at the outset. So it can get a little interesting looking at, yeah, if people would count that as like a self-citation or not. Any other questions? Or if you have any requests, things you would love to see in Altmetric that's not in there right now, you can throw them out there too, if you'd like. And I should put in the chat, I'll put in my email. If you are not a current Altmetric customer and you want to learn more, or you're like, I have no idea what you're talking about because I'm not a current customer, but I want to see more, you can always let me know. Put my email in there, or also if you do have requests of like, I want to see this clinical guideline source added, or this podcast, or this policy document, that can go to support@altmetric.com. They'd be I mean, you can send it to me too, but I'll just forward it on to support as well. All right. Well, if there aren't any other questions, I thank you very much for your time. And yeah, you can feel free to log off. I think I have to wait for my colleague Katie to come back and actually end the broadcast. I don't think I have the power to do that. So I'll just hang out here while all the rest of you log off for the day. But yeah, thanks a lot for attending. We appreciate your interest and your questions. And yeah, have a good one.